what we're increasingly seeing is consumer brands are building platforms and ecosystems around their brands as well. Patagonia, for example, has created a platform. Patagonia is a seller, a manufacturer of winterwear, and it's created a platform that provides a secondary market for anybody owning a Patagonia sweater to sell it and resell it to somebody who cannot afford a new Patagonia sweater but wouldn't mind buying a used Patagonia sweater. So in effect, they're now able to extend their control over a wider range of transactions, not just new sweaters, also old sweaters. And it also increases the inherent value of a sweater. Every time I buy a sweater, I know that there is somewhere I can resell it and regain some of the value back. McCormick Foods is a company that manufactures herbs and spices. And it's creating a platform around food where it's trying to digitize the taste preferences that users have. And it's trying to create that as a standard so that eventually anybody in the food industry can use that platform to recommend food based on the tastes of different people, based on their allergic conditions. And in this way, McCormick Foods is creating a control point around data around food preferences that consumers have. So we're seeing consumer brands create platforms around themselves. We're seeing fast-moving industries like fashion and beauty create platforms as well. Sephora, for example, has a platform which is centered around your skin profile. So if you use Sephora cosmetics, if you walk into some of their stores, they do a quick profiling of your skin, a quick test, create a data ID around that, and then start recommending the best cosmetics on the basis of that data. And that data then becomes a center point for an entire ecosystem of services. If you go online, use one of Sephora's social networks, and you like somebody sharing a picture of themselves with a certain kind of makeup that they've used, all of that data starts funneling back to you, and then connecting your interests with your skin profile, the recommendation system becomes even better and starts recommending what you should buy. The next time you walk into a store, your smartphone already knows you're in that particular store. It already has your data ID, and so it tells you what are the right kinds of things you should be buying within that particular store. So Sephora has successfully worked on creating this multi-channel platform centered around the data of these users. But increasingly, we're seeing this happening in the more traditional industries as well. Banking and insurance in particular is moving heavily in the direction of platforms. Especially in the European Union, regulations are moving banking in this direction. So in the EU, there's the launch of the PSD2 regulation, which is going to become operational within this year, where banks are required to open out their payments data about consumers to third parties. So the power is no longer with the banks. The power is in the hands of the consumers. And in this scenario, banks are trying to think about how they create new control points so that they move away from their traditional business models of just selling products to a logged customer base to creating ecosystems around those products. So we have banks like Danske Bank in Copenhagen, which is creating an ecosystem around the home buying journey, and not just selling mortgages, but helping the users in the end-to-end home buying journey. Capital One is creating a similar ecosystem in the auto ecosystem, and even out here, Commonwealth Bank has been trying to pursue a similar strategy. So we're starting to see banks moving away from traditional banking products only to creating these larger ecosystems of value around those banking products. Very often, what a bank sells is not the primary product, it's the secondary product. It's what helps you get the primary product. So what these ecosystems are trying to do is participate in the primary product value chain, which is the house or the car that you buy. Something similar is happening in healthcare. The problem in healthcare is that no single player has all of the patient's data. There is no Facebook or Amazon, and it's possibly not feasible to have a Facebook or Amazon in healthcare who has the end-to-end patient data. And so the patient data is very fragmented across the continuum of care. Who owns the data inside the hospital is different from who owns the data in the gym, and you need to have data profile about the patient across their entire life cycle. And so we have in healthcare, we have a scenario where we're likely to see standards-based collaboration, where different kinds of players are going to own different pockets of data, but are going to collaborate among themselves using an open standard. So a company like Philips could own your radiology data every time you go into an MRI machine. A company like Walgreens, a pharmacy, could own your data about what kind of medicines you're buying. And a hospital could own data about what's happening with you in the hospital. But all of them would have to collaborate around a common standard while protecting their specific turf around the data they uniquely own. We're starting to see this happen a lot in heavy industry as well, with companies like GE, Siemens, Schneider Electric, Rockwell, all of them building platforms. All of them fundamentally are building platforms that convert machines into digital objects. They digitize the behavior of a machine, how a machine is performing. They digitize all of that information. And using the digital information of these different machines, they create a digital version of what an industrial process looks like. So if you're running a plant, a manufacturing setup, what GE or Siemens helps you with is creating this single view of the manufacturing process end-to-end, because all the machines, all of the participating equipment in your plant is streaming data to the platform and is creating a single view. So these companies are creating platforms where all machine manufacturers can come in, connect, interact with the platform, and then external developers can come in and create new analytics and visualizations on top of this information that is being aggregated on the platform. We're seeing this happening in energy as well. A lot of energy companies are increasingly betting their future on two shifts that are happening. One is that energy consumption needs to be understood even more, and so energy companies will need to move closer to the customer to understand how the customer is consuming energy. But at the same time, there are a lot of new different kinds of sources of energy, whether it's alternative energy, whether it is DERs. There are new sources of energy that are coming on board. And so gathering data about consumption, connecting that with these new sources of energy, and then integrating this back with the grid so that you can provide surplus energy back to consumers. You can help consumers who are saving energy to sell back some energy. All of this would help to reduce the load on the grid. Right now, what stops this in a lot of jurisdictions is the regulation, but increasingly, we're starting to see this shift where regulators also understand that they need to deregulate the sources of production for energy and create these free markets to utilize the grid much better. And finally, we're starting to see platforms coming up in the construction industry as well. Traditional construction companies follow a linear pipeline-based model where they move from the design of a building to the construction of a building to the operations of a building, and none of this is connected. A company like Autodesk is uniquely positioned to create a platform because its software is used to design most of these buildings. So designers, what Autodesk envisions is designers use the software, they simulate how the building performs, they make choices about what kind of materials should be included in the buildings, then they pass that model inside the software, inside the platform to the constructor, the contractor who constructs the building. The model is then passed through the platform to the building manager eventually, who has sensors set up all over the building and can see whether the behavior of the building aligns with the original design choices. And in this way, Autodesk is trying to create a central platform that brings all of these different stakeholders together and makes this a much more efficient industry. So we're seeing this happening in much more asset-intensive, traditional, process-driven industries as well. This is no longer just social media, just the sharing economy. This is something that applies across the board to any industry out there. And that's what's exciting about the platform economy today.